his profile before he mounts the stage. If media is not ready, I would say that Mr. Boamah is a versatile professional with expertise in business analysis and policy. He has trained as a policy analyst in Washington, D.C., and is an alumnus of the Washington Center, an independent nonprofit committed to providing transformative educational experience. His global perspective has been shaped by his participation in international conferences across Europe, America, and Africa. He's done a lot of global speeches, and he's given keynote speeches at prestigious global platforms, including the World Youth Forum in Egypt, Future Point Africa in Nigeria, and the UN Simulation Conference in New York. His dynamic presentation have reached an audience of over 5,000 people from 196 countries, including leaders of nations, diplomats, entrepreneurs, executives, student organizations, and churches. Ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker, Mr. Boamah. A round of applause for him.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning once again. Good morning. It's a great honor to be here with all of you. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the presence of our distinguished speakers and some very important persons amongst us. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of all of you, very astute leaders of tomorrow who possess the wisdom, the insights, and the innovative ideas that our nation needs so badly to be able to transform into the version of itself that is able to midwife our skills, our innovation, our talent, and also our ideas. And so I would like to say a very big thank you to all of you for showing up today. Consider me the John the Baptist of this conference, because I'm the first speaker to open the door for all of the other speakers. In fact, I was thinking that I would double into all of the statistics, and then in the morning I said, no, this is going to be a gathering of young people. Nobody wants to hear statistics, isn't it? So I thought as much that I would take you on a journey with me so that we can understand our role in the national discourse that drives to societal or nation building. But before I do that, let me also acknowledge that there are here in this room are some of the finest men and women whose accomplishment all across the nations and the world have inspired people like us. So I do consider it an honor to be seated amongst them, because they have hoisted the flag of the nations by virtue of their accomplishment and their pursuit. And it is in their light that we have found our own voices and have actually become what we are trying to become. And so can we please celebrate the presence of all of these people here today with a clap offering? Thank you. So the subject I was supposed to talk about today was titled, The Role of the Youth in National Discourse as a Contribution to Nation Development. However, what I would like to say therefore is that we all know the problems that beset our beloved country, so I'm not going to rant, because young people, when we gather, the idea is not simply to rant, but to have a very fair discussion that points us in a direction of positivity. The goal is that whilst we live here as a people who have matured in understanding, so that we go about the very little things that we belittle, and then through the process we are able to become what we must become. Because by virtue of value addition, you decide your own contribution towards the growth of our nation. Do you agree with me on that? Yes. So criticisms are a necessary part and a necessary construct of our society, because no society progresses without constructive criticisms. And so although we have our own issues and rants and things we want to talk about. Today, why don't we spend time talking about some of the things that we can do within our own means, so that by virtue of doing these very things, we are able to scale up solutions that helps us address the constant problems that is actually affecting our society. You heard them say a lot of things, but those things really mean nothing, except for the fact that there was once a time where a young boy decided that as part of contributing to society, he must first of all learn to present value to society. Because the fact that you are a citizen of Ghana gives you a voice as a person who belongs to the nation Ghana. But a nation doesn't recognize you simply because you have a voice. It also wants to know that behind that voice is a value. And so my question to you this morning is that, as much as we alter those criticisms, the question is, how much value are we willing to add to our lives so that our contribution to society will not be forgotten in the books of history? I want you to mull over that for a second. You see, in our pursuit, we make decisions and choices. But those choices are as important as the very things that we want to do in our society. So when you talk about national development, you are looking at your own life and observing whether there's any kind of development. And I know there are many excuses that we can come up with, and sometimes legitimately so, because sometimes we are plagued with constant situations and circumstances which we didn't desire in the first place. But you see, although you may be right in your justification, you still need to understand that the drive for change begins by, first of all, adding value to yourself. Can we agree on that? Yes. So imagine a man like Dr. Kwame Nkrumah came out all the way from the UK to Ghana to want to champion a cause for national independence. He didn't come in isolation of his qualification. He actually came in his qualification. In other words, he came in a form of value. And so this morning, as we are gathered here, whilst we are asking the questions, what can we do to enhance participation in the growth of our nation? The first question that I'm throwing to you is that you must leave here asking yourself, what must be my value? So that my value gives me a voice, and that voice opens me up to the influence of the nation. Are we together on that? Yes. And so today, I want to touch on a few pointers. When I was coming, I was reading an article that said that young people are educated, less employed, and less politically engaged. Now, that is not the kind of article you expect when you read, because it is more of a contradiction. That how can a population be so educated and yet be less open to employment opportunities? And then you would think that that is just the problem. Then you also know that these educated people do not even have any interest in political affairs at all. So you see the contradiction. When you begin to read that title, you would assume that it is just to draw your attention to read the article. But when you go deep into the article, and this article was written by the Afrobarometer, so you can take a moment to look at it after the conference. What you would figure there in that is that although there are challenges on the part of the government by virtue of job creation, because the fact that you gain education must mean that those education must translate into job opportunities. But here is the case that we are bereft with those opportunities. And yet there is another issue where the education appears meaningless because they do not translate immediately into job opportunities. However, we also lack the fortitude to be able to participate in the very process that must begin the conversations that leads to the necessary change. I'm talking about policy positions. Policies are derived from conversations at the national level. And so when we are absent at the national level, what we are saying is that although we know our problem, we are still not interested in the problem. So any government looks at us and thinks that we have young people who needs their skills and their creativity and innovation harnessed. However, these young people are still not interested in advancing the very things that they talk about. Can I tell you something? See, a government is meant for the people, but you are the government as well. Can we agree on that? Yes. So if we are saying that we are waiting for a government to come do something before we find the purposes of our creativity, then we might be waiting in a long time without any realization of whatsoever. So my solution to you, first of all, is that in order for us to be able to solve some of the lingering problems in our society, we must begin, first of all, by being actively involved in the very process that begins the conversation to what I call extirpation of the forever existing problems in our society. How do we do that? We do that by, first of all, being engaged at a local level. You know, the research also said that about just 38% of the youth in a country, and by the way, when you look at our population, between the ages of 15 to 35, we form about 38% of the national population, which means that this is a youthful nation. It also means that the best days of the country is ahead of itself. And yet, these are the very people that has been sidelined in society. One, the context to this problem is that there is the issue of government assistance. Then secondly, there is the issue of youth, a lack of motivation on the part of the youth. And rightly so, because when you don't have a job, you have no interest in talking. Because when you're hungry, you can't talk so much. Maybe the reason I'm talking today so much because I've eaten. Yes. But when you lack the things that enable you to actively participate in a process that might even inure into your own good, you don't have interest. So the question then is that, how do we then begin the process? In my final year at the University of Ghana, by the grace of God, I came into contact with my head of department called Dr. Bosman. Dr. Bosman saw me as a young man who was very curious. And so in class, I would ask every question that I want to ask. And mostly I would sit at the back. And I did that deliberately because I was learning to work on my own confidence. So I would sit at the back of the class and I would raise up my hand. And then Dr. Bosman would say, "Yes, Isaac." Then when I stand up to speak, he would say that, "But why do you always sit at the back of the class?" Then I told him that I want to scream so loud so that everyone in the room will hear me. So that when we leave here, they will know that there was a young boy in class who spoke today. What I was doing was that I was introducing myself. The reason I tell you this story is because you have been screaming from social media. You've been screaming from your closet. Although that is a very tangible and legitimate reason. But I tell you that until you are recognized by virtue of the addition of value, those noises will never translate into anything palpable in your life. Please, are we together on that? Yes. So the first solution we are living here with is that you are going to go back into society and become an active participant in the very process. Because if policies are being formed from conversations, today, by the grace of God, we have social media. And unfortunately, that is a reality in our society, that we use social media to advance all kinds of negativity. But did you know that in advanced countries like the US, do you know that young people have become so influential in the political space that political parties beg them to come on their podcast so that they can reach a broader audience of youth? And by so doing, they are able to inculcate the ideas and ideologues of these young people into policy decisions. So sometimes I just tune in to some of our podcasters in Ghana, and I am sad. I am sad because we give attention to the things that are not relevant. Remember what I said in the beginning. Relevance is the beginning of preparation. And so when you want to begin to become relevant, you must first of all begin to prepare. And that preparation means that learning to assign reasonable importance to the things that matter first. And in our case, we know that we need employment. So how about we push all of our energy into the very things that can get the attention of the people who control the affairs, that can lead or translate into proper employment opportunities? Are we together on that? Yes. So how about we use our podcast? I would like to commend one of the podcasters, Kojo Sheldon. I think I saw him the other time inviting one of our political figures and asking him tough questions. This is what we must do. Tough questions. Now, we are not here to berate any political party. Neither are we here to criticize any political party. But we are young people talking. And when young people talk, we talk about things that affect our interest. And we know very well that the policies that have been, developed over time, they've not yet inured the result that we want. Sometimes it takes a while for policy to manifest. But I'm telling you that until your activity in that process is felt, nothing will change. Are we together? Yes. So we came here today that one of the solutions is that we are going to actively participate in the political process. National discourse means that there are going to be debates, some of them rigorously. And although the political space is very hostile now, which scares most of us, but the question is, nowhere cool. Am I right? Nowhere cool. Even amongst your friends, you are criticized. And so, for the mere fact that you silence a reasonable voice that could be a great contribution to society, because you fear that somebody will berate you or somebody will come at you with the guns in their mouth, I'm telling you that now is the moment where, as young people, we don't just speak out, but we speak out to the issues that matters in our lives. The second solution I want to give us is that One of the ways that we can address the issue of economic challenges, unemployment, is that we live in a world where we are advancing quickly towards an advanced version of technology never seen in the world. Now, sample the most advanced companies in the world right now. Sample them on the internet and see. Most of their CEOs are young people, sometimes even under 40. Now, what does that tell you? It tells you that the world is currently being controlled by some of the most powerful young people we see in the world. In the West, they report issues like Africa's young population is a beneficiary to their future. Now, consistently, when you hear that being reported, it means that they are seeing something valuable that we have not yet seen. And so the question then is, how do we harness these potentials? Because when I sit here, I see numbers, but I also see untapped potentials. And it is my hope that this conversation will drive you to go back into your own closet, whether it is by virtue of value addition or it's by virtue of you saying that, how do I begin the process of starting something that can contribute significantly to society? I want to leave you to a last pointer. My last pointer is that here in our midst are people who are far advanced in terms of their knowledge, in terms of the expertise. Young people, can we hear ourselves? We need to learn the process of approaching people who know better than us so that they can teach us. We are losing that virtue in society, and that is a catastrophe on itself, unfolding our society. You need to learn that you can gain value from people who have value. And so here you would have bankers, here you would have lawyers, here you would have lecturers, you have professors. One of the ways you solve problems in society is to learn from the depth of knowledge of those who have begun solving those problems, so that by virtue of that you can learn their mistakes, their errors, and then we can correct them in a proper way that translates into proper policies. I believe at this point that if I don't say much, I've said many things in a very short time. I'd like to leave you with one word, that you are the future of tomorrow. And although I'm speaking like an old person, I'm actually a young man. So we are the future of tomorrow. And because we are the future of tomorrow, tomorrow must be of utmost importance to us, even if other people don't care, because we are the ones representing the future of tomorrow. Thank you very much, and God bless us all.